How to Hide a Body. Burying and Unearthing Trauma by Ecclesia Baum. Part 1. Death. Introduction. Warning: this book will be discussing mature themes that may be upsetting to some readers. I am in no way endorsing criminal activity, nor will I be explaining how to actually hide a body. If you started reading this to literally learn how to hide bodies, you have grossly misunderstood the purpose of this book, and you may have some serious problems. Let me make this clear. I am anti-murder. Put this book down, find an altar, and turn yourself into the police if applicable. That being said, this is a book about metaphorical death, about psychological trauma. The contents of this book may be upsetting or even triggering, but know that I write it not as a doctor, but as a fellow patient. I've dealt with my own trauma since before I could keep track of my own age, and I've spent most of my time dealing with it poorly. The concept of trauma is something I think about on my long and boring drives to work, or when a man walks too close to me, or when I recognize in other people reflexes and compulsions similar to mine that indicate a similar injury. I think about it when I notice a wound in another, but they still move as if it doesn't exist and pretend their cuts don't tear under the stress. I think about it because I have done the same thing. And trauma is a wound. It is literally the Greek word for wound. We often think about psychological trauma as something caused by disaster, tragedy, or violence, and these are indeed causes, but really anything that removes our sense of security and that wounds us deeply can be a source of trauma, even if we don't think they sound dramatic enough, even if we're not sure how to articulate it, even if we've tried to ingrain it into our sense of self. I don't know if there is a single person who doesn't take some damage over the course of their lifetime. We are all living a life short and full of trouble, and if we live long enough, and sadly it doesn't always take long, we inevitably encounter something that turns our world upside down. This is the nature of life on Earth, and we're not basket cases for having endured the human experience. A wound is not a stigma. A wound is just a wound, and it's a common feature. We all understand what it is to be hurt. Perhaps you can think of a moment or repeated moments in time where your sense of security was lost. Perhaps it's something you don't want to think about. The recognition that not everyone will admit to the wound, that in times past I was not willing to admit to my wounds, made me ask myself, where does the trauma go? Where are we putting it? What do we do with the remnants of our past? Chapter 1. The Victim. Crime scene. Let us begin with an ending. Imagine you wake up one day. Your senses tell you that this is certainly your home. This is your bed you're getting out of and your blankets that you're pushing aside. The floor feels the same under your feet. The lights are switched off from the night before. The sunlight filters in through the windows just like it normally does at this time of day and this time of year and this sort of weather. You didn't feel disoriented when you got out of bed because you got up on the same side you always do. You don't stub your toe on the dresser when you pass it by because the dresser hasn't moved. Still, something isn't right. It's subtle. Were your legs always this heavy? Or did it always take this long for your eyes to adjust? Or did you always feel this tired? Are you absolutely sure the walls were always this dull? And then you see the corpse, and the corpse is your own. The realization makes your mind reel, and your fear only worsens when you look in the mirror and find that you don't recognize yourself anymore. You are here, you with your thoughts and your memories and your heart, and you're moving and breathing, but the corpse in the room tells a tragic story. The nightmare you had must have been real. For a moment, you remember the killing blow and the moments leading up to it, and you begin to wonder, if this you is dead, then who are you? What do you do now? What do you do with the body laying in the middle of your room? Disposing of a body. This is a question anyone who has suffered through a traumatic experience has asked themselves in one way or another. What do I do with the corpse of my old self? Whether we like it or not, trauma has a way of drawing a sharp line between our past and our present and placing an uncrossable gulf between what we had and what we have left. When we manage to get past the visceral, emotional response of the moment, we find ourselves overwhelmed with the dizzying task of trying to carry a heavy past into the future with feeble hands. Our mind inspects the house of our body, this temple now haunted by a situation we cannot control, and we fix the outward things. We sweep the debris from the porch, we mow the lawn, we pull the garbage out to the road, we turn on a light every now and then so that the place looks lived in. On the outside, we look fine. On the inside, we are decaying. Some of us will do what one normally does with a corpse. We bury it. But we don't do it with the mindset of a mourner. There will be no marker, and we will not be visiting the grave. We bury ourselves to hide our shame. We clean the house, we dump the body in the backyard somewhere and let the grass grow back over our dark past, and we live a normal life. We repress the pang of anxiety that we feel when we walk past the back door until we can hardly feel it, and we think we'll be fine. We think that if we push the trauma down far enough, no one will even think to look for it, even ourselves. We take an out-of-sight, out-of-mind approach as if pain is something that can be erased, as if the dirt, by virtue of not being see-through, could change the fact that we've buried something deep down. We tell ourselves that we don't need to hide forever, just until we die, and we say it as if we won't be doing it at our own expense. When we live this way, we can almost forget the issue, but eventually we find ourselves becoming a little territorial. We see a twig on the lawn that looks a little like a bone. We see shadows in the yard that look like someone curled in the corner. We hear footsteps. And suddenly, we just can't find it in ourselves to host any more barbecues. We may make excuses that sound perfectly logical as to why we don't let people get close to that part of us, but deep down, we always know the real reason. Our voice can lie and say that nothing happened. Our hearts can beat as if there was never any pain, but our hands remember how to shovel, and the smell of soil makes our stomachs churn. Our mind, our eyes, our very skin is incapable of forgetting. Others of us know the risks of distancing ourselves from the situation too much and understand the danger of trusting life not to dig up the things we want to stay buried. Our solution becomes to just hide the body in our own home where nothing can get to it. We don't ignore our wounds. On the contrary, we keep our friends close and our memories closer, and we rearrange ourselves to accommodate the extra baggage. We stuff the corpse into our closet, pack it away into a small, secret place that we won't show to anyone, and we try to live like this. We can't live like this. We can't truly connect with other people while hoping that no one will notice the smell coming from our bedroom closet or question why we keep all of our clothes in the guest room. And even if no one else sees through us, we still know ourselves, and we see ourselves as fake. And this becomes a great source of pain for us. We are the ones who have to keep rearranging ourselves. There is a constant tension caused by the difference in what we are and what we want to be seen as. Some of us will go so far as to put our corpse in the freezer. We cling to that moment of pain. We try desperately to hold on to that version of us that we can't bring back. We look at the cold face of our dead inner child or past self and try to recreate ourselves in its image as though we can go back, but everything we can remember about the old self is tainted by pain. We can't see what we used to be without the wounds, nor do we try to. We examine the killing blow and we tattoo it onto ourselves so that we never forget. As long as we have this old self on ice, we find a sort of sick comfort telling ourselves, my pain was real. And here's my proof. We identify so much as this old self that we no longer live as a person who survived, but we continue on from the day of our death as though we were a living, breathing murder victim. We don't let the pain go.